Now, let's say you've got a situation where you are working on your course and you realize that your tee box isn't as flat as it should be, or your green is way too sloped and it's just not going to work, or you didn't dig out a bunker, you didn't dig out a pond or something, or water body or something. You need to go back and you make those changes. Well, this is the video for you. So into Unity, and I'm not going to show you how to dig because I already did tutorials about this. This is more or less the process after you've dug out what you do then. So on this particular instance here, I had a water body and it wasn't dug out. If you recall from a couple of videos ago, I brought my water plane in and frankly, it was a mess. Let me just show you here. Um, my water plane, it didn't really fit my water base all too well. So you can see here, it's just not really even. So I wanted to fix that. And then also, if you recall, I built this new tee box, and this tee box was not flat. Okay, if I go down here, you can see it's really not flat at all. It kind of slopes down. So what I did in the meantime was, and let me turn my terrain back on because I have it disabled at the moment. I went in and I flattened this tee box. So now if I go down here, you can see that it's actually lifted up a little bit. It's probably hard for you to see, but I lifted this and flattened it out a little bit. And I also, and it's also hard to tell here, is I dug out the terrain here. But now what the problem is I have to go conform these meshes to it again. I've got to conform that tee box so it isn't underneath the terrain now, and I have to reconform my water base so that my water plane looks better. So how do I do that? Well, now that I've done my digging, I'm just going to go up here to terrain. I'm going to do export to OBJ, and I'm just going to overwrite my old OBJ. So first thing I have to do is I have to take my terrain that I'm working on, bring it up here, and just make sure that when you do this, you make sure your terrain is at X, Y, and Z at 0. We don't want that terrain raised or lowered on here, so make sure that that's at 0. And I can leave these the default, and I hit export. And you might recall that takes a couple minutes. Well, first of all, I have to decide where to save it, right? And I'm going to save this in my OPCD projects, my Hershey Country Club, my Hershey OPCD, terrain, and there's my old one. Now I could overwrite this one or I could do a new one. I'm just going to overwrite this one. It doesn't hurt you to save as a new one, but these do take up some space. So I'm going to write that. Do you want to replace it? Yes. And as you guys know, this takes a couple minutes, so I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so that exported. Now what we need to do is we're going to open up our Blender post mesh, the most recent one you have, right? So whichever one has your most recent splines that you brought in and processed from Inkscape, that's the one you want open. And so in here, we've got this post mesh file, and we're just going to import our new terrain. So we can just go up and it'll just overwrite the old one. And if in case you forgot, it's listed here in the hierarchy as terrain, and you can actually turn that on and off, but you'll get some ugly Z fighting. So let's just turn that off. I'm going to import terrain OBJ. And then here's the new one. Today, 5:19 p.m., I created this new terrain OBJ. Or if you renamed it, you want to make sure you import the renamed one. I'm going to open that. And then in the background, you might recall if you have your windows, it'll open up. And this takes a couple minutes, so I'm going to pause again. So that is completed. I now have my new terrain over here. And if I zoom in here a little bit, now what I need to do is I got a little bit of a choice, and it depends on how much you changed here. But you remember in this conformed terrain, I can either do selected or all. So if you only did like a bunker, you typically could select that bunker and then maybe the mesh surrounding it, and make sure you don't forget its blends as well. Those need to conform. Or you can just do them all. It's just a lot easier to me to do them all, and it doesn't really take long. So I'm just going to do all, and then I'm going to conform to terrain. And then while that is working, I'm going to pause. So that worked, and we're done, but I want to show you something of note. So if I go into free fly mode, oops, free fly mode, there we go. And I fly in here, you're going to see something funny, which is my water plane. You have to remember that when we do a conform all, like we just did, it's also going to conform our water plane. and we do not want that. So my water plane now has been formed to my terrain. Let me see where that is over here. So here's my water plane. My water plane should be flat, right? It should be flat. Well, now it's convex because it has been conformed because I did all. So what I can do is I can just delete that one. I can come here again and I can do add water plane to selected. And now it's back, okay? And I just basically deleted the old one and put the new one in. So I'm all good now, okay? So that looks good. So the next thing is I need to export all these guys. So where does that look like inside of here? Well, this is the wrong window. I'm sorry. So here's my FBX folder, which is currently empty. You might recall that we want to take our FBXs and put them in this folder. We want to make sure it's empty before that you do that. So if you have your old ones in here, just delete them out. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to go to export, batch export all FBXs. And let me make sure that that is running before I go away. It is, so you can see that this is running in our console window, and I'm going to pause. So now that we have our FBX files exported, okay, we need to get them into our Unity project. So here is my FBX folder inside my Hershey OPCD folder, which contains all the FBXs I just exported. Here is my FBX folder inside my Unity project, okay? So if I go into my OPCD projects, Hershey Country Club, my Unity project here, assets, now these are all the folder assets in my Unity project. If I come down here to FBX, here are all the FBXs that are currently inside of Unity. So now I need to take the ones that I just exported. I'm going to say Control A. I'm going to copy those, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste those in. And it's going to say, do I want to replace those? Yes, I want to replace all these files in the destination. And now when I do that, you can see if I sort by date modified, it's like 5:26 p.m. here. You can see that all my new ones have overwritten the old ones. And if I go down here, I can go to the end and see if there's any old ones that stick around. And there aren't. So it ends here. These are all the same date and time. So I know I have all new FBXs inside my Unity project and no old ones left over. Okay, that's really important. I don't want any old ones in there because I don't want those sticking around. So I got all the old ones removed, or actually I replaced all the old ones. And now when I open up Unity, it's going to start processing those. It's looking and says, oh, you got a bunch of new assets in your project folder. Let me take a look at those. So it starts processing them. Now remember, the things in your scene, your splines in your scene, okay, are referencing the shapes, the meshes that are in your project folders. So when this is done, this should update all these automatically for us. And I might want to pause. It shouldn't take more than a few more seconds. I'll let it run out. I'll tap dance here. So when this is done, you should see these all get updated. And I'll turn off the terrain so you guys can see. Our water plane will look better. We might have to raise it up, but our water plane should then, because I used RAM to precisely dig out, and then our water base got conformed to a much cleaner terrain, that will look better. And then our tee box, which was right here, will also look better. Almost done. Okay. Okay, that's looking better. Now it still looks like poopy because we got our terrain turned on. So let me turn off the terrain, disable it. Look how clean that looks. So let's look at our tee box first. Now I didn't do a good job flattening that. I didn't come back far enough, so it looks like it slopes off. And I should lift this up a little bit, but it is what it is. I would probably go back and fix that and run things through again. Yeah, you can see I didn't lift it up enough. I should have lifted it up more like this height so it goes back a little bit smoother, but didn't do a great job there. Now this looks much better though, okay? Now my water, you can see it goes right up into our water base. And if I highlight this water plane, and why isn't it coming up? Here we go. So I got my water plane highlighted. I don't see my gizmo though. One second. See my gizmo because I didn't have the transform tool selected. So if I hit the transform tool up here in the upper left, you can see my water plane is now selected, and I can grab it and lift it up just so it's at the top of there. And now you can see when I fly around this, I could raise this down, maybe make this 0.9. Oops, that was too much. 0.09, maybe 0.8. Try that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So I got my blend right here, my water base, and you can see that that water just when you go around just barely tickles the top of there. And of course I could lower it a little bit more if I wanted to expose some more base. You can see here the base does get exposed a little bit more, so it's not absolutely perfect, but it's pretty darn good. And that's the advantage of using RAM for this stuff versus doing it by hand. But that's it. So that's how you make terrain changes.